Hello, hello. Here we go. Gentlemen and female gentlemen. Yes, I stole that line from a certain YouTuber, sorry. So today we are doing some more lore dives. Once again stealing Nux Taku's little shtick here. Sorry, Nux. So today we're diving into the lore of Starkiller. Uh the dark story of Starkiller explained. So if you're new to the channel, please like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. Also, this was streamed on YouTube, so it'll give you a little bit more of an emphasis on wanting to turn on post notifications so you never miss a live stream and you can interact in the comments and I'll interact with you guys. I'd love to have a little chats while doing these things with you guys. So let's get started. Shit.
Starkiller wasn't born as the ruthless assassin the galaxy would come to fear. His real name was Galen Merrick, son of
Galen
Jedi
Merrick.
Knight Kento Merrick and his wife Mali. After Order 66, the family fled to Kashyyyk, hoping the Wookiee forest would keep them. Order 6 Merrick, son of Jedi Knight Kento Merrick and his wife Mali.
I thought that Jedis can't have kids or it's very frowned upon and you're not supposed to, I thought. Um I mean, look at Anakin, he had to keep I mean, if it wasn't for everything that went down and everything would have went smoothly and Padme would have still been alive and he was still a Jedi, they would have had to keep the kids a secret from what I understand, right? So is this just them having a child behind the back of the Jedi Order or is this after 66? Or Order 66, not 626. 626 is Stitch. Ugh.
After Order 66, the family fled to Kashyyyk, hoping the Wookiee forest would.
Okay, so no, he was already born. He was born before Order 66. Okay.
After Order 66, the family fled to Kashyyyk, hoping the Wookiee forest would keep them safe. Mali used her healing abilities to help the native Wookiees, while Kento lived in hiding, always fearing discovery. Years later, Mally was killed while defending the natives from Trandoshan slavers,
Oh,
leaving
that
Kendo
sucks.
as the sole parent and strengthening his resolve to protect their son at all costs. Unfortunately, safety was an illusion. When the Empire began hunting down every last Jedi survivor, their sanctuary became a target.
And I think Kashyyyk, weren't they taking Wookiees and using them as slaves? I'm pretty sure they were. If I remember correctly,
Empire began hunting down every last Jedi survivor, their sanctuary became a target. In 18 BBY, Darth Vader found them, and what should have been a simple execution turned dangerous. The terrified 6-year-old child instinctively pulled Vader's lightsaber from his hands using the
Oh,
Force,
snap!
making him realize this was no ordinary child. Instead of killing the boy, Vader made a decision that would change galactic history. He slaughtered his own stormtroopers to hide the
What?
discovery, then kidnapped Galen and vanished into the depths of space.
Okay. What? So what I'm assuming is that Darth Vader's gonna have him as like a sacred apprentice or something like that. To in the future, I'm assuming was the original plan was to use him as somebody to help him overtake Palpatine because he does not yet know about Luke and Leia. That's what I'm getting the gist of right now. And if I am correct of any of these things, I do want to say is I don't really know too much of the Star Wars lore. Um, I did start reading the first of the Darth Bane books, I think it is, which funny story, or it wasn't Darth. So I also got a Darth Plagueis book. I do not remember where uh the actual book for it is. I lost it sadly, but when I first bought it, I accidentally uh I bought the fucking uh French version on accident. So it was all in French. And I was like, what the fuck? And the funny thing is I bought it refurbished just because it was cheaper and it took like a month and a half to get to me house. And then when I got it, I was like, oh, yeah. Makes more sense, makes sense.
For the next 20 years, the child was raised and vanished into the depths of space. For the next 20 years, the child was raised in absolute secrecy. His memories were buried. His will
Okay.
was broken through endless torture and conditioning to create the perfect weapon. The galaxy would know him only as Starkiller.
Starkiller!
Meant to inspire.
Okay. Listen here, that's a dope ass name though. Dope ass name. You imagine being like, oh, that's the one and the only Starkiller or some shit like that. That's kind of a dope name.
The galaxy would know him only as Starkiller, a name meant to inspire fear. Yet deep inside, a spark of Galen Merrick remained, and it would eventually destroy his master's plans. That's exactly why I've gone through
Okay.
all the Legends sources, the games, novels, and expanded universe materials to bring you his complete story.
Alright.
Vader's Apprentice. What Vader did to young Galen was the systematic destruction of everything that made him human. He didn't simply train the boy to be a warrior. He methodically erased his identity, his compassion, his very soul.
So at this point, as an adult or whatnot, as they're showing him, I wonder if he somehow brainwashed him to make him forget how he found him or something, or he knows everything that goes on or whatever, brainwashed him to make him think that his parents were bad, whatnot. I'm not. Maybe.
Every feeling of mercy or kindness was treated as a weakness that needed to be eliminated entirely. The transformation immediately began aboard Vader's massive Super Star Destroyer. The child who had played innocently among Kashyyyk's ancient trees was thrown into a carefully designed nightmare meant to break his spirit completely. Vader understood that creating the perfect weapon required more than physical conditioning. It demanded the total reconstruction of the boy's psychological foundation. The training regimen went far beyond anything the old Jedi Order had ever conceived. Vader would drop young Starkiller alone on a galaxy's most hostile worlds with minimal equipment, forcing him to survive against predatory creatures.
No way, dude. That's crazy. Imagine being like fucking 7, 8 years old and being dropped in a barren land just to fend for your not barren, but like a hostile world just to have to fend for yourself, dude. That's crazy.
These weren't random tests of endurance, but were carefully orchestrated experiments designed to break down every trace of his natural human empathy.
Okay.
These trials taught him that survival depended entirely on embracing anger, fear, and hatred as sources of power. The message was always the same, reinforced through pain and repetition. Compassion gets you killed, and mercy is a weakness that your enemies will exploit. Only
Obviously.
through embracing your darkest emotions can you find the strength to truly survive in a galaxy that shows no pity to the weak. By age 15, Starkiller could channel his accumulated anger and pain into devastating bolts of Force lightning. The first time it happened was during a particularly brutal training session, where Vader had been pushing him beyond his limits for hours without rest. When the exhausted teenager finally broke down and screamed in pure frustration, crackling blue energy erupted from his hand.
So I thought that you had to uh what's it called? I thought that you had to be struck by force lightning to be able to use it. I thought that was a thing. Because I thought that you had to be struck by, force lightning and such like that. I swear to God that I heard that somewhere. Um, maybe. Dude, this thing takes forever. Oh, maybe not. Okay. So according to good old Grok, no, in Star Wars, specific quote from old legends continuity non-canon expanded novel universe, particularly from the book Darth Plagueis. In that story, a character Plagueis describes true Sith lightning as required by the user, eventually experienced firsthand, being the receiving end of the power to fully internalize and master its present as part. So in Legends, I mean, you don't really need to. Okay, lightning is simply a dark power. Okay, so from what I am,
Without warning or any discernible pattern, the droid would suddenly and violently shift from beloved companion to deadly assassin. Its
okay,
holographic projections would transform into lethal opponents wielding very real weapons, forcing Starkiller to fight for his life against what he had believed was his only friend. The randomness
that
was
sucks.
crucial to the conditioning's devastating effectiveness. If the betrayals had followed any kind of predictable schedule, Starkiller might have learned to anticipate and emotionally prepare for them. Instead, they came during shared meals, during moments of rare laughter, during the vulnerable minutes before sleep, during what seemed like perfectly normal conversations about distant worlds and cultures. He could never truly relax, never felt
So
entirely safe in any situation, no
so
matter how
basically,
peaceful it
he used the bot to just keep him on edge and keep him from like having any sort of peace or anything like that to fuck with his head and to keep the anger and all that jazz and keep him using that stuff. You know what I mean?
never felt entirely safe in any situation, no matter how peaceful it appeared. The lesson being burned into his developing mind was as clear as it was cruel.
Trust no one.
Everyone will eventually betray you if you give them the chance. One particularly devastating betrayal occurred when Starkiller was a child. He had grown
Yes.
attached to a holographic companion who visited his quarters each evening, providing comfort during intensified training periods. The revelation came during what should have been a peaceful interaction. The gentle figure suddenly transformed into a Sith assassin wielding twin vibroblades,
What?
lunging at the defenseless child with lethal intent.
As a
Starkiller
child?
barely managed to defend himself, striking down what he thought had been his only source of affection.
Oh,
This
that's
cycle of manipulation
crazy.
defined every aspect of Starkiller's relationship with trust and emotional attachment throughout his development. Despite Vader's relentless conditioning, fragments of Galen Merrick's true self persisted. Strange dreams haunted his meditations. Fleeting voices, half-remembered faces, and flashes of a childhood Vader had tried to erase. By his late teens, Starkiller had become something unprecedented, a Force
Excuse
user
me, guys,
of
sorry.
immense power who felt no connection to the light side whatsoever. Unlike fallen Jedi who had known compassion before embracing darkness, he possessed the raw ability to challenge masters while remaining psychologically dependent on Vader's approval. As he approached adulthood,
What?
Starkiller's training intensified to include strategic thinking and detailed study of Jedi combat techniques recovered from Temple archives. Vader was creating the perfect instrument for hunting down and eliminating the remaining survivors of Order 66. Yet his master failed to realize that every weapon, no matter how perfectly forged, could eventually turn against its maker.
True.
The Jedi Hunt. By 2BB disturbing rumors were spreading through the galaxy's criminal underworld about surviving Jedi hiding among the stars. These weren't simply random fugitives desperately trying to avoid Imperial attention. They represented something far more dangerous to the Empire's long-term stability.
A rebellion?
Proof that Emperor Palpatine's new order could be resisted. Since standard Imperial forces had proven powerless against even individual Force users operating alone, Starkiller finally entered the larger galactic stage. After many long years,
So basically, he's using Starkiller as his basically not sidekick, but tool to get rid of the Jedi. Because from what I remember from the Star Wars lore, Darth Vader was more worried about killing all the other Jedi, while Palpatine was more worried about the politics and stuff like that, if I'm correct. And he did not want uh Darth Vader to go out of his way to kill Jedi, and he's like, at some point it was just a if you come across them, just kill them. You know what I mean? So I'm assuming his whole plan with Starkiller was so he can have somebody go out and be going after Jedi while he can do his stuff with Palpatine and still finding a way to keep him on the down low.
alone, Starkiller finally entered the larger galactic stage. After many long years of brutal conditioning and training in total secrecy, nearly half a lifetime spent under Vader's shadow, the Dark Lord finally decided his weapon was ready to be unleashed on real targets. He provided Starkiller with his own heavily modified starship, the Rogue Shadow, and more importantly, assigned him his first permanent crew member, Captain Juno Eclipse. This seemingly routine assignment would change everything, though neither master nor apprentice realized it at the time. Captain Juno Eclipse represented everything that Starkiller had never encountered during his isolated, controlled upbringing aboard Vader's flagship.
So with this,
She was a
I wonder. So this whole time, is he not interacting with other people? Is he just isolated between him, his robot, that hologram, or whatever the fuck, and Vader? Is that the only sort of people that he's been around?
encountered during his isolated, controlled upbringing aboard Vader's flagship. She was a decorated Imperial naval officer with an exemplary service record, having distinguished herself during several major campaigns against rebel cells throughout the Outer Rim territories. But what made Captain Eclipse truly dangerous to Vader's carefully constructed psychological
Starkiller has a crush on her. I'm calling it. Calling it right now. He wants to break her doonies down. That's what's happening.
What made Captain Eclipse truly dangerous to Vader's carefully constructed psychological conditioning was something much simpler. She was genuinely, authentically kind to those around her, without any
Yeah.
apparent
Okay.
ulterior motive or calculated purpose behind her compassion. When Starkiller first boarded the him as a person, rather than as simply a weapon to be deployed against the Empire's enemies.
Gives him a
Something
chubby.
about Juno's natural warmth and genuine respect for him as an individual began awakening emotions that Vader had spent 20 years trying to eliminate entirely.
So at this
During
point,
his
he's
mission,
26.
the assassin
Okay.
was assigned to eliminate General Rom Koda, one of the most dangerous Jedi survivors still actively operating against Imperial interests. A veteran of the Clone Wars whose paranoid distrust of clone troopers had saved his life during the execution of Order 66. While most other Jedi had trusted their clone soldiers completely and been betrayed or murdered by their own men, Koda
Yes.
had refused to work with clones throughout the entire war. Instead,
Damn.
he had built and
He
trained
knew.
his own militia, composed entirely of non-clone volunteers who remained loyal to their general when the Order came to eliminate all Jedi. Koda's latest
crazy.
operation was targeting the massive TIE fighter construction facility in orbit around Nar Shaddaa. For Starkiller, this mission represented the first real combat against living opponents who were actively trying to kill him while defending something they genuinely believed in. The assault on the orbital facility was devastating in both its efficiency and its display of raw, overwhelming power. However, something completely unexpected began happening as Starkiller progressed through his mission, systematically killing every person who stood between him and his target. For the first time in his existence, he started experiencing genuine moral discomfort with the violence he was inflicting on others. These weren't faceless training dummies that simply deactivated when struck, or holographic projections that flickered out of existence without consequence. They were real people with individual faces, distinct voices, personal histories, and genuine feelings. Soon, the assassin arrived at the facility's command center, where the Jedi Master waited with grim determination. During their battle, Koda observed that there was conflict within Starkiller, light struggling against darkness, and that he didn't have to remain Vader's weapon forever. These words carried a weight that had nothing to do with their literal meaning, because no one had ever suggested to Starkiller that he possessed choices about his identity or his future. The duel's turning point came when Starkiller...
Just imagine going your whole life, or most of your 20 years, so since you were a little jit, 6 years old, to now, you know what I mean? Just all it was training, whatnot, mental and physical torment to have you just have nothing but rage and such stuff like that, you know what I mean? And then, you know, going on your first mission, or basically your first time in a long ass time, just going into the out and going on your own, basically. And then someone's like, dude, you have a choice of, hey, do you want to stay with Vader, or do you want to do your own thing? It makes you think for a second, because there's no one's ever given you that stipulation.
Frustrated by the general's defensive capabilities and genuinely unsettled by his words, resorted to a technique that no true Jedi would ever have employed. He reached out with the Force and seized control of Koda's own lightsaber, dragging it across both of the general's eyes in a deliberately cruel display of dominance. The return journey to Vader's flagship aboard the Rogue Shadow was unlike anything in Starkiller's previous experience. Instead of the isolation he was accustomed to after disappointing his master, he found himself sharing space with someone who seemed genuinely concerned about his mental and emotional state. When Juno observed that he seemed troubled and asked if he wanted to talk about what had happened, it wasn't an interrogation designed to extract useful intelligence. It was simply one person offering emotional support to another who was clearly struggling with something difficult.
Yeah, imagine after 20 years having someone that's actually genuinely like interested, or like wanting to like pick your brain, basically, I guess. And actually somewhat cares about you and your well-being and, like, you know, it I'm sure it's a shocker, it's a shocker.
Something about Juno's genuine care and respect was awakening emotions that Vader had tried to eliminate, and this growing internal conflict would make everything much more complicated. The next
Why do I feel like Vader's gonna, get wind of this and kill her? Why do I have the feeling that she's gonna do it? Or he's gonna have Starkiller kill her?
growing internal conflict would make everything much more complicated. The next stage carried him to Raxus Prime, a planet-sized graveyard containing mountains of discarded technology. The hyperspace journey had provided time to study his next target through Imperial files. Kazdan Paratus, a brilliant Jedi Master whose expertise in droid construction had made him invaluable during the Clone Wars. Paratus had survived Order 66 through circumstance rather than skill. The clone
Okay.
troopers under his command had already died in a disastrous campaign, leaving no one to execute Protocol 66. The
Okay, so
traumatic
he just got
loss,
lucky.
combined with years of isolation, had severely damaged the Jedi's mental stability. Deep within the technological wasteland, Starkiller discovered Paratus' refuge, a crude but elaborate recreation of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, constructed from salvaged materials and populated with mechanical mannequins the mad Jedi treated as living companions. Advancing through the
Crazy.
makeshift temple, Starkiller cut through Rhodian salvagers and automated defense systems. In the central chamber, he faced not just Kazdan Paratus, but a mechanical recreation of the entire Jedi High Council. The small Alina had equipped himself with a four-limbed harness granting enhanced mobility, while mannequins bearing fallen Council Masters' likenesses activated with vibroblades. The confrontation tested everything Starkiller understood about the nature of madness and grief. As Starkiller systematically destroyed each mannequin, Kazdan Paratus became
Okay.
increasingly distraught. The mad Jedi wept openly as he witnessed the deaths of his beloved masters.
Okay, so my whole thing is, aren't Jedis not supposed to feel fear or anything? I mean, no, it's not actual fear. Never mind. Never mind. Oh, never mind. Because I'm sure Obi-Wan Kenobi felt this same way when Anakin was turning into the dark side, and they had that fight in what was it, Mustafar, the lava planet, or whatever the fuck. I think it's Mustafar, isn't it?
The climax came when Starkiller hurled the Yoda mannequin directly at Paratus, sending the broken Jedi tumbling across the chamber's supports. Paratus attempted to crush his attacker with
Okay.
salvaged machinery, but Starkiller reversed its trajectory, crushing the mad Jedi beneath tons of twisted metal. As
Oh, that's
Paratus lay
crazy.
dying, lamenting his failures, Starkiller experienced an emotion his conditioning had tried to eliminate: pity. The sensation forced him
Pity.
to confront that his enemies were not just obstacles, but living beings capable of suffering
Yeah.
and grief. That feeling of unwanted compassion
Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Isn't that the quote from Yoda?
lingered as the rogue shadow carried him toward his final hunt. Soon after, he arrived in Felucia, a world where the Force pulsed with alien
Felucia.
life. This jungle planet was steeped in raw energy that created massive fungal growths, carnivorous plants, and phenomena defying conventional understanding. Here,
Okay.
Shaak Ti, one of the few masters to survive the initial purge, had carved out her final refuge. Unlike Paratus, Shaak Ti had not been broken by her experiences. The Togruta Master had spent years preparing for this confrontation, using Felucia's force-rich environment to strengthen her connection to the light side, while training with native inhabitants. When Starkiller finally located her meditation platform near the ancient abyss, a massive sarlacc pit, she was waiting with calm determination. Their duel unfolded on ancient ground
Okay.
where the Force had flowed for millennia. Shaak Ti fought with fluid grace refined by decades of experience, but Starkiller's raw power gradually drove her back toward the Sarlacc's waiting maw, each exchange bringing her closer to the creature's digestive pit. Even as her strength failed, Shaak Ti met Starkiller's gaze with piercing clarity. In her final moments, she delivered truths Vader had hidden for 2 decades, that he was not free, but enslaved, that he served not out of loyalty, but conditioning,
out of fear.
and that the Sith always, inevitably, betrayed their own servants. With these words echoing across the fungal landscape,
I don't think it was servants. I think it was the opposite. To be honest, I think it hasn't always been the apprentice always betrays the master take over control.
betrayed their own servants. With these words echoing across the fungal landscape, Shaak Ti made her final choice. Rather than allow execution like a common criminal, she cast herself into the ancient abyss, choosing death with dignity and defiance. Her sacrifice carried a warning that would prove prophetic.
Hold on. Did he just try to catch her? So there is still
defiance. Her
a little bit of humanity
to
left
the ancient abyss, choosing death.
Telling her no.
Death with dignity.
He looks shocked in this, like he didn't really want her to die. That's weird.
And defiance. Her sacrifice carried a warning that would prove prophetic. Shaak Ti's final words about Sith treachery would prove far more accurate than Starkiller could have imagined. The first great betrayal. Fresh from the harrowing trials at the ruins of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, Starkiller returned to Vader's hidden audience chamber aboard his flagship. He carried with him the memory of Shaak Ti's death on Felucia and the weight of her final warning. Presenting Shaak Ti's lightsaber as proof of his success, he felt an anticipation that bordered on excitement. Surely now, after 20 years of preparation, Vader would deem him worthy of their shared destiny. Never before had Starkiller allowed himself to feel genuine pride at Vader's approval, a dangerous emotion his conditioning had taught him to suppress. He dared to imagine a future where he stood as an equal beside his master, where they
I mean, I guess. Oh, fuck.
He dared to imagine a future where he stood as an equal beside his master, where they would overthrow the Emperor together. The possibility filled him with excitement that made him careless about concealing his presence in the Force, a mistake that would prove catastrophic.
What does Palpatine sense him when he does that?
This moment of triumph and anticipation would become the foundation of his ultimate destruction and rebirth. The betrayal came without warning or ceremony. The Dark Lord of the Sith had been monitoring their activities from the shadows all along. His ancient
he knew
eyes
the whole
taking in
time.
every
Damn.
detail of Vader's secret apprentice with calculating interest. Before Starkiller could process seeing the Emperor, his master ignited his crimson blade and drove it straight through the apprentice's back, the searing energy bursting forth from his chest in an act of cold betrayal. The physical agony was nothing compared to the psychological devastation. 20 years of unwavering loyalty, desperate attempts to earn approval.
Hold on. So ironically, she says it, and then right after when he arrives to Vader's ship, he gets turned on. That's crazy.
20 years of unwavering loyalty, desperate attempts to earn approval, and sacrificing his humanity for acceptance were all in vain in a single moment of betrayal.
And think about this though. That was his only father figure for 20 years since he was 6 years old, and he's just gonna betray him like that. That's crazy, dude. That's sad.
Humanity for acceptance were all in vain in a single moment of betrayal. All his victories, all his devotion, all his desperate hunger for approval had meant nothing. To the Dark Lord he had worshipped, he was never a son nor a partner, only a disposable tool, discarded the moment it served its purpose. This was the first major turning point in Starkiller's life, when everything he believed about himself, his purpose, and his place in the galaxy came crashing down. The betrayal didn't just wound his body, it shattered psychological chains binding him since childhood, forcing him to
Yeah.
see Vader not as a mentor, but as the manipulative monster he'd always been.
So
As
is he
Starkiller
gonna become like
tumbled
an
through the void,
anti-hero
his
kind of guy?
last coherent thought was bitter recognition of truth. Shaak Ti had been absolutely correct. The Sith always betrayed their own, and he had
Yeah.
been nothing more than a slave. Yet Vader had no intention of allowing his most powerful weapon to perish uselessly. Within moments, the Dark Lord's medical droids retrieved his body and rushed him to a hidden facility where advanced technology fought desperately to preserve what remained of his life.
So is the only reason that Darth Vader did that was because he got caught? Was it like, oh shit, he sees him, kill him, or make it seem like he killed him? Is that why? What happened?
Now would come the most sophisticated psychological manipulation Vader had ever attempted. Upon regaining his consciousness, Starkiller found himself strapped to a medical table, body covered with surgical scars and cybernetic implants. More
Yeah,
devastating than physical injury was seeing Darth Vader looming over him.
he's gonna gaslight the fuck out of him. I just know it. Watch.
More devastating than physical injury was seeing Darth Vader looming over him, showing no remorse or regret for the betrayal. The explanation that followed was a masterpiece of psychological manipulation designed to exploit Starkiller's desperate need for meaning and purpose. According to Vader, the
Gaslighting.
execution had been a necessary deception to convince Palpatine that the threat posed by his secret apprentice had been permanently eliminated.
Okay,
Now that the Emperor
called it.
believed
Called it.
Starkiller was dead, they could work in complete secrecy to achieve their true goal, overthrowing the Sith Master and establishing a new galactic order.
Yeah.
The lie was
okay.
perfect because it gave Starkiller exactly what he needed most, a sense that his suffering had meaning, that his apparent death served a greater purpose. Rather than accept that he'd
So
been
it was
betrayed
an
and
outright
discarded,
lie.
he could believe his pain was part of an even more sophisticated strategy.
So my whole thing is, was there truth to it, or was it just an outright lie? Did because I would assume that Darth Vader did want to turn on Palpatine th- this whole time and rule it himself.
Instead of a direct assault on Palpatine that would certainly fail, they would employ subtlety and misdirection. Starkiller would venture into the galaxy and gather the Empire's scattered enemies into a single organization. This
Oh.
rebellion would distract the Emperor's attention while providing convenient targets when the time came.
Wait a minute, dude. What? So was the rebellion originally started by Vader and Starkiller? Is this what the lore is kind of trugging you towards? Is like, hey, it was started by the inside.
For Vader's coup. But this mission came with a price. Vader demanded that Starkiller sever all ties to his previous life, including his growing emotional connection to Juno Eclipse. This was the
Aw,
most
that
difficult
sucks.
order he'd ever received, as the Imperial pilot had become his only source of genuine human contact. This choice between
True.
obedience and compassion would define everything that followed in his journey toward either damnation or redemption. Building the Alliance. Starkiller's mission to gather the Empire's enemies began with a task that forced him to confront the direct consequences of his previous actions. His first assignment required tracking down General Rom Koda, the same Jedi he had fought and permanently blinded above the TIE fighter facility on Nar Shaddaa.
Okay.
However, before he could even begin that hunt, Starkiller made the first truly independent decision of his adult life. Instead of following Vader's orders to eliminate all connections to his past, he chose to rescue Juno Eclipse from Imperial custody, where she had been arrested
Because
on
he loves
fabricated
her.
treason charges following his staged execution. This act of defiance,
He
small
loves
as
her.
it seemed, marked the beginning of his transformation from absolute obedience to independent moral choice.
Yeah.
Finding General Koda proved surprisingly easy. What the once proud military commander had become was deeply disturbing to witness. The blind Jedi was drowning his sorrows in a seedy Cloud City cantina, his military uniform hanging in tatters, and his legendary discipline completely shattered by despair. Watching Coda struggle with simple tasks like
He became a
locating his
drunk
drinking
and
glass
shit.
or navigating around furniture without assistance awakened something in Starkiller that his conditioning had never prepared him to handle.
Okay, so my whole thing is, you have the Force. Did he lose his connection with the Force? Is that why? Because I thought with the Force, no matter what, you can still like see or like sense where everything is at around you, so you didn't really need your eyes. Or was he in so much despair that he, lost that connection with the Force? Is that what happened?
Awakened something in Starkiller that his conditioning had never prepared him to handle. Genuine, crushing guilt over the suffering he had directly caused to another sentient being. From
Oh,
this moment forward,
there we go.
Starkiller would begin choosing compassion over the cold efficiency that Vader had tried to make his only guiding principle.
So he's
When
more of like an
stormtroopers and their
anti-hero.
lumbering walkers crashed through the doors of the Vapor Room Cantina, clearly intent on arresting the broken Jedi for his past resistance activities, Starkiller faced his first real test of compassion in battle. His intervention was immediate and devastating, but also revealed how much his approach to violence was already beginning to change. While he fought with all the skill and power Vader had drilled into him, he also
Yeah?
found himself actively working to minimize casualties among innocent bystanders. The unlikely partnership that developed between former enemies proved surprisingly effective, as they began reaching out to other opponents of Imperial rule scattered throughout the galaxy.
So is he just now going to be turning on Vader and kind of doing like a full on resistance himself, or is this still the plan to where it's going to be the distraction? Because it could be part of the plan, but also at the same time, it's affecting him. Like he's doing both, and then towards the end, he's going to turn on Vader. Maybe.
As they began reaching out to other opponents of Imperial rule scattered throughout the galaxy, Coda's extensive knowledge of surviving rebel cells and dissident politicians provided exactly the kind of intelligence networks their mission required, while his reputation among resistance fighters lent credibility to their cause. Their first major joint operation took them to Kashyyyk.
R two
Princess
D
Leia
two.
Organa of Alderaan had been
Leia.
stationed there as the
Okay.
Emperor's official observer, a political captive forced to oversee the Skyhook's construction. For Starkiller, this assignment represented something far more profound than a simple rescue mission.
Okay. So my whole thing is Leia Organa was arrested plenty of times by Imperials, and then she's got now. And also she's come into contact with Vader at least once in the opening scene to Star Wars 4. So if she was force sensitive, how did he not feel the force inside of her when they met? Because I thought you were able to like feel the force around other people to be able to tell if they're like force sensitive or not. You know what I mean? So how could he not tell with Leia that she was force sensitive?
It was a return to the world where his childhood had been murdered and his true identity buried beneath layers of Sith conditioning. Walking among the massive Roshar trees where he had once played as an innocent child named Galen Merrick, buried memories began to resurface after more than 15 years of relentless suppression under Vader's training. Every sight, sound, and scent of the forest carried emotional weight that threatened to overwhelm the psychological barriers Vader had constructed around his
Okay.
earliest experience.
So does he not remember his parents and Vader killing his parent or his father, and just doesn't remember his parents in general?
More disturbing than personal nostalgia was witnessing the systematic oppression being inflicted on the Wookiee population by Imperial occupation
Yeah,
forces.
using him as
The
slaves.
mission also provided a direct connection to his buried past when their search for Princess Leia led them through the ruins of his family's old home. In the most transformative vision,
Okay.
he witnessed a recreation of the night his father had died, but this time from the perspective of someone old enough to understand what was truly happening. His father's spirit spoke with infinite love and sadness, calling him by his
Okay.
true name,
So he became a
Galen,
Force
and
ghost.
expressing profound grief for what his son had been forced to become. From the ashes of his destroyed past, Starkiller began to reclaim the one thing Vader could never truly eliminate:
Familia!
hope for redemption.
Oh, hope for
Their
redemption.
activities on
Okay.
Kashyyyk also led to an unexpected encounter with the consequences of his past missions. When Senator Bail Organa disappeared while investigating Imperial activity rumors on Felucia, Starkiller found himself returning to the jungle world where he'd killed Shaak Ti.
Okay. So is this all just gonna lead into him turning on Vader? And when he turns on Vader, I wonder if he gets away or if he just dies in combat with Vader. I mean, I would hope he got away. Aren't they making like a Starkiller TV show too? I think they are. Are they? Oh, dang. They're not. There's no official for Star Wars show or series centered on Starkiller, Galen Merrick. Be- Starkiller remains a Legends character, and Lucasfilm hasn't greenlit any adaptation. Okay, so my whole thing is like the whole reason they did like The Force Awakens and that the or not prequel, the sequel trilogy. Um, the way they did was because they said there was like no characters or no female. Same thing with like acolytes and shit like that. Whatever, right? So my whole thing is, why didn't they just incorporate characters from Legends and like you can twist their story because Legends is Legends, it's not canon. So like you can still use characters from canon and twist them into your own image, you know what I mean? Or like they're still like basically the same people with like some backstories different or some traits a tad bit different, you know what I mean? I think that would have been way better than what we got. But that's what we got. Hopefully with Kathleen Kennedy stepping down and what's his face overtaking or taking over it. Yes, there's going to be some stuff Kathleen Kennedy greenlit that's still going to be in production just because they kind of have to make it. But after that, hopefully it's a lot better. Hopefully.
What he discovered was not an Imperial trap, but the aftermath of the Jedi Master's influence persisting in the most unlikely place. Shaak Ti's former apprentice, Maris Brood, had survived her master's death. Sadly, grief and anger had twisted her Force connection until she was nearly unrecognizable from the hopeful
She
Padawan she'd
becomes like a
once been.
Sith or something.
Felucia's chaotic energies had amplified her psychological instability, and when Starkiller finally located her hidden enclave, he discovered Senator Organa was her prisoner, held as bait. The duel with Maris Brood was unlike
Okay.
any of Starkiller's previous encounters with Force users. She was
She
neither
become a
a
Sith?
seasoned master clinging to fading ideals, nor a hermit driven insane by isolation. Instead, she was young, unpredictable, and
Or like a
consumed
dark
with fury,
Jedi?
her twin lightsabers flashing with raw skill that lacked refinement but compensated with desperate ferocity. As they fought, Maris raged about betrayal, abandonment, and the cycle of violence that had consumed everyone she'd ever cared about. She accused Starkiller of being nothing more than another Sith executioner, blind to the
She can
destruction he was
teleport?
spreading.
What?
In her words, Starkiller heard disturbing echoes of his own doubts and fears. Yet unlike the fallen Padawan, he was beginning to recognize that darkness didn't have to define his future. For the first time
No,
in his
it all.
existence, Starkiller chose mercy over vengeance when he spared Maris Brood's life. This decision to show compassion to a defeated enemy marked another crucial step in his transformation from weapon to moral agent.
Okay, also, like, technically at this point, if she's using red sabers, isn't she more like a dark Jedi? Not even a dark Jedi, but like more like a dark side user in a sense. So, like, his whole objective was to go after those Jedi. So technically, she's a dark side user, so she's not a Jedi. If you get my gist of what I'm trying to say, so technically, he could just let her go.
The choice was entirely his own, made not because of orders or conditioning, but because he recognized something of his own pain and confusion in the young woman's desperate fury. Working
Okay, he
alongside
saw
General
himself
Coda,
in her.
Princess
Okay.
Leia, and rescued Senator Organa, Starkiller began the delicate process of making contact with other Imperial opponents scattered across the galaxy. This gradually expanding network came to include Mon Mothma of Chandrila, whose political acumen and Senate connections proved invaluable, and Garm Bel Iblis of Corellia, whose military experience provided a foundation for organized resistance. Each new alliance required Starkiller to demonstrate not just combat abilities and tactical knowledge, but
Okay.
commitment to principles completely foreign to his Sith upbringing. The emerging rebel leaders could sense shadows clinging to him that some questioned whether someone shaped by the Sith could ever truly serve the cause of freedom and justice.
Okay, so my whole thing is, right, he's still technically under the not tutelage, but like he's still working with Vader. So technically, Vader's the one that started the rebellion in a way. Like, yes, Starkiller carried out the plan and everything like that, but wasn't it mostly of the brain of Vader? So this whole rebellion was made by Vader. He was playing both sides.
However, beneath that darkness, they also began perceiving something unexpected: the first signs of moral growth, and the remarkable possibility that even someone with his background could choose redemption over revenge. The galaxy's greatest hope for freedom was being born from its most unlikely source. Together, these complementary perspectives form the foundation of what would become the Alliance to Restore the Republic. For Starkiller, standing among these remarkable individuals and contributing to discussions about freedom and justice provided proof that even someone born in the Sith's shadow could choose to serve something greater than personal power.
Yeah.
Throughout this period of rebellion building, Starkiller maintained secret communication with Vader through
Yep.
proxy,
Okay. There we go.
providing
Yep.
detailed
That's what I
reports
thought.
on the growing alliance's membership, resources, and strategic capabilities. At the time, he genuinely believed he was gathering intelligence for their eventual strike against Emperor Palpatine, never suspecting that every piece of information was helping his master plan an even more devastating betrayal. When the moment of ultimate treachery finally arrived, Galen Merrick would learn the true cost of trusting those who served the dark side.
Hold on. No. Okay, so technically, Vader started the rebellion, but his original plan for the rebellion was to gather all these rebels to kill them. Is that what the original plan was? And then it kind of turned into, "Fuck you, you're not gonna get us." They get away, and it becomes an actual full-on rebellion that comes to bite him in the ass. Is that what's going on right now?
The perfect trap. The trap that would determine the future of galactic freedom was sprung with clockwork precision during what should have been the rebellion's moment of greatest triumph.
Yeah.
The secret conference on Corellia had proceeded exactly according to their carefully laid plans, with
Yes.
representatives from across the galaxy gathering in a hidden facility beneath Coronet City to formally sign the founding documents of the Alliance to Restore the Republic. A cause
Okay,
built on
yep.
hope, not fear, on unity, not control. The documents being signed promised rights no ruler could take away, fair representation for every system, and rules to stop any one person from holding absolute power again. The rebel
true
leaders had
democracy,
spent
okay?
months working toward this moment, pushing past disagreements, scarce resources, and the constant danger of Imperial discovery. Senator Organa's diplomacy brought the groups together, and Mon Mothma's vision turned the scattered cells into a unified fighting force. Watching them choose a cause greater than their own survival, Starkiller felt something his Sith training had never prepared him for:
Hope.
genuine love for people willing to
Love.
risk everything
Oh, okay.
for the freedom of others. Without any warning, Vader's perfectly coordinated assault began. The Imperial attack was quick
Okay,
and
yeah.
precise, showing
So
clear
he was just
knowledge of the
used.
facility's security and escape plans. Leading the assault was Darth Vader, accompanied by stormtroopers specially trained to deal with Force-sensitive targets. The betrayal cut far deeper than mere military strategy. It struck at the very heart of trust, redemption, and the possibility that people could genuinely change.
Holy shit! Holy shit! Hold on. It was all a trap. Okay, so is this the turning point into Starkiller? And he's like, "Fuck you! I'm staying with their fucking rebellion, Vader." And is this like a little fight? Gets away, yada yada yada.
Trust, redemption, and the possibility that people could genuinely change. The moment that broke Starkiller's rebuilt view of the world came when Vader revealed his identity to the captured rebel leaders. He explained that their entire movement had only been a trick to gather the Empire's enemies in one place so they
That's
could all be
crazy.
destroyed at once. Every alliance Starkiller had built, every bit of hope he had given to desperate people, and every step he had taken toward redemption, all of it had only been part of his master's trap. These were
No
people who had trusted
way.
him
He
despite
got
his dark
used
origins,
twice.
who had seen potential for good within him, even when he couldn't see it himself.
And watch, they're
The
not going
hand
to
of
trust him
Emperor
anymore,
Palpatine
huh?
was evident in the betrayal. He had permitted the rebellion to grow just large enough to be destroyed in one devastating stroke, ensuring that when it fell, the galaxy's fragile hope would be shattered. The fight seemed lost until
does
help
Organa
came
get
from the
out?
most unlikely source, the one who had shared his journey and understood how deeply he had changed. Proxy's ultimate sacrifice provided one final chance for something greater than mere revenge. The
Okay.
ancient training droid hurled itself into direct combat against Darth Vader with a
No
ferocity that
way!
pushed its programming far
What?
beyond original design
That's
specifications.
crazy.
This was no longer the artificial companion that had been programmed to betray Starkiller throughout his childhood. This was a consciousness that had chosen loyalty and genuine friendship over its original directives.
That's
In its final
crazy.
desperate gambit,
No
Proxy
way.
projected the holographic likeness of Obi-Wan Kenobi, Vader's former Jedi Master,
Yeah?
whose memory still retained the power to disrupt even the Dark Lord's legendary self-control. The sight created just enough confusion to give Starkiller the opening he desperately needed. That crucial moment of chaos allowed Juno Eclipse to pilot the rogue Shadow through the Imperial blockade with miraculous skill, sweeping Starkiller from the battlefield on the fleeing ship. As Juno cared for his wounds, she finally asked the question she had held back for too long: his true identity.
Dude, that's absolutely fucking insane. Big brain play by Vader and Palpatine, but like, holy shit. Holy shit. So, the whole Palpatine finding him and then Vader doing that, was that a whole, like, a part of the plan to make it seem like, hey, Palpatine thinks you're dead? And then he's like, hey, lay down. I grabbed the fucker. We're gonna make him think that he's gonna start a rebellion to turn against us or turn against you with me as the brains of the operation or whatnot. And let's just get all of those fucking all those people together, and we can just kill them at once. You know what I mean?
For the first time, Starkiller answered with complete honesty. His name was Galen Merrick, and he was no longer anyone's weapon. But their brief moment of safety ended when they received intelligence that would force Galen to confront the ultimate consequences of both his past actions and his present choices. Emperor
Okay.
Palpatine had transported the captured Alliance leaders to his newest creation, the Death
Death
Star,
Star.
an incomplete but fully functional battle station that served as both a symbol of Imperial power and a testing ground for the most destructive weapon ever conceived. In the Death Star's observation dome, perched high above the super laser, the Emperor prepared to execute the founders of the rebellion in a public ceremony designed to demonstrate what happened to those who dare oppose his absolute authority. Everyone who had trusted Galen
no.
despite his dark past, who had seen good in him, and who had risked everything to believe he could change, was about to die because of the information he had given and the traps he had helped set without knowing. Now he faced a choice that would decide not only his own legacy, but also the future of freedom in the
He
galaxy.
becomes a
He could
Jedi!
escape with Juno and start a new life far away. Or he could do the impossible, enter the most heavily guarded base in history,
Did he just
confront the
kiss
two
her?
most the impossible, enter the most heavily
He
guarded
does!
base in history,
That
confront the two
Chad!
most powerful Sith Lords alive, and try to save the people whose only crime was believing he could choose good over evil. This was the second great turning point in Starkiller's life, the moment when Vader's weapon truly died forever, and Galen Merrick was fully reborn. The ultimate
Let's go, baby!
sacrifice.
Let's
The
go.
infiltration of the Death Star represented everything Galen Merrick had learned about courage, strategy, and moral purpose condensed into a single desperate mission. The battle station's corridors were filled with Imperial forces expecting his arrival, but his approach
Oh, they
was
knew
no
he was
longer
coming?
that of Vader's assassins seeking to eliminate obstacles. Instead, he fought with the focused determination of someone who had finally found something worth dying for. The path to the observation dome took him through the Death Star's most heavily defended corridors, guarded by stormtroopers and defenses designed to stop even a Jedi. Every
Okay.
obstacle overcome brought him closer to a confrontation he knew he could not survive. Yet his resolve never wavered, because the stakes extended far beyond his own fate. Galen's path through the Death Star forced him to face the full scale of Imperial cruelty. It was not just a battle station, but a symbol of absolute power, built to crush hope itself.
That's
Every
crazy.
hallway, every weapon, every prison cell reflected the Empire's belief in fear,
Oh, there was prison cells.
control,
Yeah,
and the
obviously there was
removal
fucking
of all
prison cells in the
resistance.
fucking.
His mission was no longer only about rescuing the rebel leaders. It was about showing that even the Empire's greatest creation could be challenged by someone who chose love over hate and sacrifice over selfishness. This time, Galen fought not to prove himself worthy of his master's approval or to demonstrate his growth as a weapon of war. He fought to save the lives of people who had shown him unconditional acceptance and genuine love.
Yeah.
Never before had he entered combat without internal
see this.
reservations about his
Oh,
purpose,
yes.
and he discovered that fighting from a foundation of love and selfless devotion made him stronger than fear and hatred ever could. The
And then he
battle
gets
in the
his
Death
ass
Star's
whooped
throne room
and
was
died.
unlike
I'm kidding,
anything
kidding.
seen before. It was more than a contest of skill. It was a clash of two beliefs about power and purpose. As the duel went on, Galen realized something that changed his approach. Winning was not about greater strength or sharper skill. It was about showing that the light side's belief in redemption and second chances was stronger than the dark side's hunger for control and revenge.
Yes.
The turning point came when he managed to penetrate Vader's seemingly impenetrable defenses through a combination of unconventional tactics, sheer determination, and the kind of inspiration that can only come from fighting for others rather than yourself. The duel reached its climax as Starkiller's furious assault sent the Dark Lord crashing to the floor of the observation dome. Standing over his defeated master, Galen faced the final test of his journey. He had the power and every reason to end Vader's life and take revenge for years
What is
of
the only
abuse
reason
and
he was still
betrayal.
alive
But
was
before he
because
could
of
act,
mercy?
Emperor
Oh,
Palpatine stepped from the shadows with the same offer that had corrupted so many before. Kill Vader, take his place, and claim power beyond imagination. It was simple and tempting. All Galen had to do was give in to his anger, strike down the man who had taken his childhood and his father, and accept a Sith legacy stretching back thousands of years. In that crucial moment of ultimate decision, Galen Merrick remembered who he truly was and what he had chosen to fight
he
for.
chooses not
Instead
to,
of
and then gets
holding on to
stabbed. I'm kidding.
pain and anger,
Kidding!
Galen thought of the people who had believed in him, even when he could not believe in himself.
Yeah?
He remembered General Koda's trust in a former enemy, Princess Leia's courage against impossible odds, and Senator Organa's faith that even someone with his past could choose justice over power. Most
Okay.
of all, he thought of Juno Eclipse, who had seen past his training in darkness to the person he could become if he chose
Aww.
love over hate, compassion over cruelty, and hope over despair. Rather than take the revenge and power the dark side offered, Galen made the choice that defined him as free. He shut down his lightsabers, cast them aside and threw himself into Palpatine's lightning, using his body as a shield to protect the rebel
Okay.
leaders who trusted him. The dark side tore through him with unbearable pain, but he held on through willpower and the knowledge that his suffering
Holy
was
shit!
saving others. After a lifetime of being used as a weapon, Galen finally chose how that weapon would be used, one last time. Through his ultimate sacrifice, Starkiller completed his transformation from instrument of destruction to legend of hope and redemption.
Okay.
With one final act, Galen took the full force of Palpatine's attack and released it in a massive burst of energy that hurled the Emperor backward and shook the Death Star. The explosion tore apart the throne room and caused enough chaos for the rebel leaders to break free and escape. When the storm of energy cleared, Galen Merrick lay still on the shattered floor. His sacrifice was complete, and in his last moments, he felt peace and the certainty that he had made the right choice. As his life faded, Galen's final sight was the rebel leaders escaping toward freedom and the future he had made possible by choosing light over darkness. In honor of Galen's heroic final stand, Princess Leia proposed that the Alliance to Restore the Republic adopt the Merrick family crest as their official symbol. The ancient starbird design became one of the most recognizable emblems in galactic history, carried on flags, uniforms, and starships throughout the coming war. Every time Alliance fighters saw that symbol, they would remember the man who had given everything to ensure that their cause would survive and eventually triumph. Galen Merrick's story should have ended there, with redemption so complete that it changed a weapon forged by the Sith into a mark of freedom. But Darth Vader could not let it go. His inability to accept the loss of his greatest creation gave Starkiller's tale a haunting epilogue. Vader's obsession. The death of Galen Merrick should have ended Starkiller's influence on galactic history. Instead, it began Vader's descent into an obsession that would ultimately lead to his own downfall. Unable
Is he gonna try to clone him?
To face the loss of his greatest creation, and perhaps haunted by emotions he refused to acknowledge, the Dark Lord descended into an obsession that would consume him entirely. The very completeness of Galen's sacrifice made it infinitely more disturbing to Vader than any simple death in combat would have been. His apprentice hadn't merely died, he had consciously chosen to die for principles that directly contradicted everything Vader had spent 20 years teaching him.
Okay, does he become a Force Ghost? Force Ghost? No, I highly doubt it.
In doing so, Galen had proven that Vader's entire philosophy of power and control was fundamentally flawed. This discovery shook Darth Vader deeply. If someone raised from childhood to serve the dark side could still choose the light, it forced uncomfortable questions about his own path. Rather than face those doubts, Vader turned to denial and drastic action. On the stormy world of Kamino, he began a secret cloning project. Using genetic material taken from Galen's body, Vader tried to...
Holy fuck! Oh, how did I call it, dude? That's crazy.
Cloning project. Using genetic material taken from Galen's body, Vader tried to recreate his apprentice. Not only his strength in the Force, but also his memories, skills, and most importantly, his complete loyalty. Because Galen had chosen sacrifice over power, Vader tried to build a replacement who would never betray him. Vader's plan was twisted and ultimately futile. He aimed to recreate Starkiller's power while stripping away the conscience that had led to Galen's betrayal.
So, I thought the only Force-sensitive clones that were out there were Palpatine's new body when he returns and Snoke. Because Snoke isn't Snoke like a clone of Palpatine? Because I'm pretty sure he is. Okay. Let's see. No, Snoke is not a clone of Palpatine in current Star Wars canon. He's close in concept, but not a direct clone. Here's a breakdown. Okay. Snoke is an artificial strand cast, a genetic engineering being created by cloning experiments and DNA splicing by the Cis Eternal cult on Exegol under orders of Darth Sidious Palpatine. Palpatine and his loyalists made him as a proxy slash puppet to manipulate events in the galaxy after the Empire's fall, specifically to corrupt and control Kylo Ren slash Ben Solo from afar, drawing him to the dark side. While Snoke's creation involved Palpatine's genetic material and cloning tech, part of a broader efforts to achieve immortality and transfer essence, he isn't a straight up identical copy or failed Palpatine clone. His DNA was likely mixed with other sources, which is why he looks and sounds completely different, tall, scarred, deformed versus Palpatine's features. Canon explicitly calls him a Strandcast, a more complex engineered hybrid of cloning, not a pure clone. So basically, isn't that what like Palpatine's son is, or Rey's father? Isn't he something like that? Palpatine refers to him as something my followers have attempted to create in, and we see vast of failed Snoke's like bodies in Rise of Skywalker, showing one of many experiments, or he was one of many experiments. Palpatine's puppeted him remotely, as revealed when he tells Kylo Ren, I have been every voice you've heard inside your head, mimicking Snake's voice. Snoke had his own consciousness and ambitions, but was ultimately a tool, not Palpatine himself, reincarnated into or duplicated exactly. Okay, so isn't Rey's father the same way? Because I'm pretty sure Rey's father. Yes. Okay. So yes, Rey's father, named Drathan, in canon tied in materials, has created a very similar way of Snoke as an okay. Yeah. Okay. So basically, Snoke and Rey's father were brothers. Ugh, that's crazy. Okay, so what's the difference between the two? Snoke was a highly successful Strandcast engineer with a powerful dark side connection, used a puppet. Okay. And then Rey's father was a failed Strandcast created from Palpatine's genetic template, but lacking a strong force connection, low metachlorine count. Um, Palpatine rejected him as an unworthy procession or direct heir status, calling him an abomination or disappointment, despite his biological or biology carried the Palpatine bloodline. Unlike Snoke, Stratton escaped. Exegol lived as a quote unquote nobody, drunk trader, scavenger, married a woman named Rey's mother, and then they had Rey naturally through reproduction. Okay. And then Palpatine later saw Rey, his biological granddaughter, via engineer K, as the perfect vessel for his spirit essence, which is why he targeted her. So the whole reason that Palpatine wanted Rey was to kind of just like transfer himself into. Okay, makes sense.
Where the original had while stripping away the conscience that had led to Galen's betrayal. Where the original had chosen love over hatred, Vader would forge a replacement who would never face such conflicts of conscience. The reactivated Kaminoan cloning facilities stood as monuments to Vader's desperation, as well as his failure to understand what had truly made Galen unique. For a while, the technology was advanced, and consciousness itself was far more complex than any machine could replicate. As a result, dozens of attempts ended in failure, with most clones either driven mad or destroyed by the strain of artificial force powers. In the end, one subject seemed different, awakened with memories of Galen's past and full command of the Force. But whether this
Okay.
was truly a clone or the original Starkiller restored remained shrouded in doubt. This surviving clone possessed all of Starkiller's combat abilities and Force sensitivity. Doubts gnawed at him. He questioned whether his memories were truly his own, yet the love he still felt for Juno was undeniable, a bond
Okay.
too strong to dismiss. He could recall his father's sacrifice, but it carried no personal weight beyond intellectual understanding. Something was still missing. The clone's memories felt empty, like copies without meaning. They showed that no matter how
So
perfect the process,
it's memories, but he has
Vader
no
could not
feeling towards those
recreate the
memories.
spark that had made Galen unique. For Vader, he believed he had finally created the perfect replacement for his lost apprentice. But the clone soon broke free of his master's control. He escaped Kamino, driven by a love for Juno that felt as real as his own heartbeat, even if his
Yes.
origins left him unsure of who or what he truly was. When he finally found her, Juno chose to believe that the man before her truly was Starkiller, until proven otherwise. Her reaction showed what Vader refused to accept. Cloning could not bring Galen back. From there, he
No.
sought out Coda, but Coda refused to accept he was just a copy. No one can clone Jedi, he insisted, affirming that Starkiller was the man he had always known. Still, even artificial beings could
Okay.
transcend their origins through free will. During his quest to establish an independent identity, the clone's path led him to the remote swamp world of Dagobah. There, he encountered Yoda, the ancient Grand Master of the Jedi Order,
Damn.
who had somehow managed to survive
So
both the Clone
Yoda-
Wars and the subsequent purges. The wise old Jedi
Yoda knew
saw through the
Starkiller,
clone's
or the
artificial
clone.
origins to the genuine spark of consciousness that lay within. Yoda offered profound insights about the nature of identity and the relationship between one's beginnings and ultimate destiny. When the clone questioned whether an artificially created being could ever be considered truly alive and capable of genuine moral choice, Yoda's response was both simple and revolutionary. He
Okay.
explained that what mattered was not how someone began, but the choices they made. It was a
True.
truth Vader could never accept, and proof that his obsession was misguided from the start. Armed with this vision, the clone began to forge his own path, separate from both Galen's legacy and Vader's expectations. Each act of compassion, each choice to protect others rather than serve his own interests, each moment when he chose mercy over vengeance was another step toward proving that even artificial beings could embrace the light. The final confrontation
Okay.
between the clone and his creator occurred in the heart of the Kamino cloning facilities, surrounded
So my whole thing is, wasn't that already like proven with the Clone Wars series and how clones are? Like, hey, just because they're clones, they're still their own beings, and they're, you know what I mean?
clone and his creator occurred in the heart of the Kamino cloning facilities, surrounded by the very machinery that had given him artificial life. Vader had laid a trap, using Juno as bait to lure the clone back to the
Aw,
world of his
snap.
creation. But the Dark Lord underestimated how much his creation had grown beyond his original programming. This duel wasn't just master versus apprentice, it was Vader's domination versus Galen's redemption played out one final time. When the clone finally defeated Vader in combat, sending his creator crashing into the laboratory equipment that represented years of obsessive effort, he faced exactly the same crucial decision that had transformed his genetic template from weapon into hero. In the end, the clone made his own choice. He spared Vader by showing
Listen here, if he chose to not spare Vader and to kill him, my thoughts, do you think Luke would have became a Jedi? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
mercy instead of vengeance, he proved he was no puppet of the dark side or of his maker. This decision was final proof that genuine heroism could emerge even from artificial beginnings, that the capacity for moral choice was not limited to naturally born beings. More importantly, it demonstrated that Vader's obsession with control was ultimately futile. The clone's victory wasn't about becoming Galen Merrick. It was about proving that some essential qualities of character could never be manufactured or replicated through technology alone. The capacity for growth, for love, for sacrifice. These emerged from consciousness itself, not from the circumstances of one's creation. Though
Okay.
questions about his ultimate nature would always remain, the surviving clone had earned the right to choose his own path forward, not as a replacement for what had been lost, but as a unique individual who happened to carry the
His
echo of
own
someone
human being,
else's
yeah.
greatness within him. With Vader.
Okay, so right. Let's see what Rock thinks on this, okay? So according oh, there we go. Okay, so according to Grok, yes, he would have still uh yes, Luke Skywalker would most certainly still become a Jedi, even if Starkiller's clone, Subject 1138 from The Force Unleashed 2, had chosen to kill Vader during their duel on Kamino to save Juno Eclipse. This is all in Legends continuity, the old expanded universe, since Starkiller, Galen Merrick, and his clones are non-canon now. Here's why Luke's path likely stays on track. Timeline placement: The Force Unleashed 2 is set in 3B ABY, shortly before or around The Empire Strikes Back. The light side ending has the light side ending has the clone Starkiller spare and capture Vader alive after defeating him, with the rebels taking Vader as prisoner. This is the canon Legends outcome for the game. Through the series was left open Though the series was left open-ended, the dark side ending where the clone kills Vader is non-canon and leads to the Dark Apprentice, a perfect dark side clone, immediately killing the player's character instead, with Vader surviving anyways. Even if Vader dies early, Vader's death wouldn't derail Luke's journey. Luke's path to become a Jedi starts independently. Obi-Wan Kenobi already begins guiding him in A New Hope, Zero BBY, long before any TFU events. Okay, so Luke leaves Tatooine, joins the rebellion, destroys the first Death Star, and seeks Yoda on Dagobah, largely due to his own drive. Leia's message and Obi-Wan's influence not directly because of Vader's actions post A New Hope. Yoda trains Luke in Empire Strikes Back, 3 ABY. So the same time where Starkiller is fighting Darth Vader. So either way, he would have still became a Jedi of some sorts. Potential changes: if Vader dies on Kamino, 3 ABY, the Empire loses its enforcer early. Palpatine might promote somebody like an Inquisitor, Tarkin if he's still alive, or accelerate finding a new apprentice. But the rebellion gains a huge boost, possibly accelerating their victory. Or Palpatine might want to find Luke to have Luke become his apprentice and kind of do the same thing that he did with Anakin. Luke still faces trials, confronting his heritage, learning Vader slash Anakin is his father. Might happen differently or later, perhaps via holocrons or Yoda slash Obi Wan. I mean, in my head, I think he would meet Palpatine at some point, and Palpatine would probably be the person to tell him. In Legends, Luke becomes full Jedi Knight by of Return of the Jedi for ABY through mastering control over his emotions, refusing to kill in anger. Vader's presence fuels that arc. The father-son confrontation is key to Luke's growth. But if Vader's already dead, Luke might face Palpatine directly or find another path to prove himself still emerging as a Jedi. Um, no legend source suggests Vader's survival is required for Luke to train or become a Jedi. In fact, What if discussions, fan theories, forums often conclude Luke would still train under Yoda and Obi-Wan and fight the Empire, possibly ending the war sooner, which I think would actually happen too, without the emotional Vader twist to complicate things, and also Vader won't be in the way as much as he was in the series. Counterpoints from Dark Side entering in the non-canon dark side path of TFU games. Alternate futures show a dark Star Killer potentially turning Luke to the dark side, uh, e.g., in DLC visions or the Armored Star Killer storyline. But this isn't. That's if Star Killer stays dark and serves Vader slash Sidious. If the clone kills Vader out of light side motivations, which I think would be more realistic, to stay Juno, reject Sith control, it aligns more with heroism, potentially even helping the rebellion further, which can make Luke's path easier, not harder. So I wonder, what if Luke was trained by Starkiller?
Captured and his obsessive project in ruins, the clone had broken the cycle of control and vengeance that had defined the Starkiller legacy. He had proven that even those created as weapons could choose to become something greater. In the video game's alternate ending, not reflected in the novels, the clone's story took a much darker turn. Overwhelmed by the burden of living up to his predecessor's sacrifice and
Okay.
tormented by questions about his own authenticity, this version succumbed to the very darkness that Galen had rejected, becoming the Dark Apprentice and serving as a reminder that redemption was never guaranteed. The story of Starkiller was never
Okay.
supposed to be recorded in galactic history. He was created in secrecy, shaped into a weapon through systematic brutality, and betrayed by the very master he had been conditioned to worship. Yet his journey from the galaxy's most feared assassin to its most unlikely champion proved a truth that tyrants have desperately tried to suppress. No matter how dark one's
Yes.
origins, the fundamental power to choose light over darkness remains within reach of every sentient being.
Dude, that's crazy. So, real quick, let's take a look at what Grok thinks what would happen if Starkiller's clone trained Luke. So basically, what would happen is in this what if legend scenario where Starkiller's clone, Subject 1138, kills Vader on Camino to save Juno, survives, slash rejects to start his dark programming and defects to the rebellion to train Luke, it would supercharge Luke into an unprecedented powerhouse Jedi, which I think would happen. Even if like Vader turned into the light and trained him, dude, potentially tapping or potentially toppling the Empire by mid 3 ABY and reshaping the galaxy, but with massive dark side pitfalls from the clone's Vader painted unstable psyche. Um, this builds directly off the Force Unleashes two's light side leaning clone sparing Vader canon, but flips to a I can't fucking speak right now. Heroic dark choice kill, assuming he overcomes cloning defects and Dark Apprentice, his perfect dark twin. No official comics, novels, or infinities explore the exact path. It's pure fan speculation echoing desires for Starkiller aiding the rebellion. Um, so let's just look more into what Luke would be training like. Yoda Obi-Wan will kickstart Luke Dagobah basics, but clone amps it to an elite level. Style fusion. Vader's brutal uh form 5 plus Merrick's acrobatics slash explosive force lightning storms, battle repulse, one-handed. Okay, Luke's masters dual wielding. Luke masters dual wielding, force crushing star destroyers, mid pull. Okay, dark side edge. Clone teaches control to rage, giving Luke Palpatine tier offense early, no more only defense. Dogma. Yoda warns of imbalance. Okay. Duration months of intense sparring. Luke hits night level by Endor time frame. Clone as dark touched mentor like alive. Kriya. Knight of the Old Republic 2. Aspect combat. Whatever. So major ripple effects. The Empire crumbles faster. No Vader means no Bespin trap. Luke / clone duo raids Coruscant early. Palpatine unleashes fleet / Inquisitors, but clones cheats, killing Vader. Demoralizes Imperials. War ends 3-4 ABY, not DS2, no DS2 needed. Palpatine's counter. Palpatine's accelerates clone / essence transfers. Exegol hints. Tempts clones his creation or possesses him. Tragic betrayal or clone shields Luke dying heroically. Luke's arc learns Anakin's full fall from clone Vader's apprentice stories. Redemption theme shifts, saves the clone from madness, not Vader. Luke emerges balanced Grandmaster, founding Jedi with gray elements. Dark twist and bad ending. Clone instability. Cloning causes blackouts / rage fits. TFU 2 canon infects Luke, mirroring Anakin's fall, or clone snaps, turning Luke dark. Okay. And then the rebellion fallout. Heroes distrust Vader's monster, quote unquote. / Koda clash with the clones' methods. Blah, blah. Okay. So basically, it can give them the edge they needed. And so basically, if this were to happen, there'd most likely be no Rey storyline, which I would rather have this than a Rey storyline, to be honest. But you can't change what's already good, or you know what I mean. Okay, I mean it's a good story. It is truly. I really loved this canon, or this legend story. It's really nice. I enjoyed it. But that's all for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed too. Like the video, comment down below your favorite part of the video, subscribe, turn on post notifications while you're at it. Again, this was streamed on YouTube, so you know, turn on post notifications so you know when I'm streaming, and then I would love to interact with you guys. So let me know what you guys want to see in the future in the next one. Peace. Okay. I'll be right back, guys. I'm gonna go take a bathroom break, get a drink of water, and I'll be back. All right, we're back, guys. We're back. Don't worry, I didn't forget about you guys at all. Um, so we do have videos uploading, and as a quick sneak peek on what is coming, let me just give you guys a little look here. So this morning, the entire this video release, which we streamed yesterday, and then um the next one's gonna be the one that we just recorded, which was the Star Killer, which will be coming out Tuesday. And then yesterday's stream, when we did the Modern Warfare trilogy, we also did the Black Ops uh, one as well. So those are going to be the three so far. And then we're going to, after that, come out with wrestling one. So here we go to continue here. Um, give me a second. I got a cup of water. Gentlemen and gentlemen, we've been doing lore dives, and we're gonna do some more lore dives. And today we're gonna dive into the lore of TNA Total Nonstop Action Wrestling and the story of Sting, but not any story of Sting. No, no, no. It's going to be the Joker Sting. We're gonna take a look at that. Um, I was younger when this whole thing happened, and I wasn't into TNA at all. Okay, the only thing I knew of was WWE at this time, or even I think at this time I was still like 4 or 5. So hold on, let me look this up. Um, okay, the Joker TNA storyline was between 2010 and 2011. Um, transformed in the middle of 2011. Okay, so the storyline built to a climax of Bound for Glory, where Sting faced Hogan in a key match. Sting turned face by the end. Okay, so basically 2011 was when this happened. 2010, 2011, which I was fucking 6, 7. 6, 7. No, don't ever let me do that ever again. Okay, so I'm yapping real quick. Like, comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications. And this was streamed on YouTube. So give you a little more emphasis on wanting to turn on post notifications. because on these live streams, I would love to interact with you guys. Let's get into it. Also, link to the original videos in the description.
When Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff joined TNA in both on-screen and production roles, many wrestling fans were certain that TNA was going to become WCW 2.0. Hulk Hogan's track record of doing what was right for Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff's perceived lack of contention when it came to the Hulkster's wishes was enough to make fans get prepared for the worst. People's fears were seemingly met when an NWO reboot took place almost immediately after Hogan and Bischoff's arrival, and behind the scenes, TNA originals were expressing their concerns publicly in regards to the changing of the guard. Go back and look at news articles from this time period and you'll see nothing but headlines like this one right here. Bischoff and Hogan were blamed of not only destroying TNA, but they were also blamed of stripping TNA of its identity.
Okay.
Because of how this era of TNA is perceived, many wrestling fans just write it off. Many fans would tell you that there was nothing to see in TNA from 2010 to 2012, but those same fans would be very wrong. A continuation of the Sting vs Hulk Hogan rivalry that done record numbers for WCW was played out from mid-2011 in TNA, and while this does back up the theory that TNA was becoming WCW 2.0, that doesn't necessarily mean that it was bad. Not only did Hulk Hogan show a ton more...
I will say, in a way, AEW is kind of getting that same slack when it comes to that stuff, just because they hire quite a bit of ex-WWE talent. But like TNA, they're not just about ex-WWE talent, because they've created a bunch of their own homegrown talent, such as MJF, Darby Allin, Wardlow, which I'm not too sure how much longer Wardlow is going to be in there just because of how he's treated. I mean, one of them just went to WWE Powerhouse Hobbs, who was basically a homegrown talent as well. Like, they have all of these people that are homegrown, which it kind of gets overshadowed by the former WWE people, or wrestlers such as like Billy Gunn. Not so much with Billy Gunn, but Billy Gunn, Bryan Danielson, which if you want to go technical, he's not really a WWE talent. Yes, he went to WWE, but he was originally ROH technically, I want to say technically, if you want to get technical. Although he did find himself in WWE. And whatnot. Let's continue.
Personality during this rivalry? Well, more personality than your standard NWO Hogan from 97 and 98, but the man called Sting had a drastic change of character that actually led to some of Steve Borden's very best work. Using Sting's history with Hogan and Bischoff in WCW, a storyline played out where Sting would slowly go crazy, and with Heath Ledger's performance in the Dark Knight movie as inspiration, Sting would become the insane icon, better known to fans as Joker Sting.
Joker Sting!
This is the subject of our video today.
Okay. See how this is gonna...
We have a lot of ground to cover in today's video, and I know many of you didn't watch TNA during this time period, so let's start all the way back in April of 2011. Keep in mind that this is TNA in 2011. There's a lot of jumping around and storylines weren't very streamlined, so the best thing to do here is to go over what happened on a week-by-week basis. To set the stage a little, Hogan, Bischoff and Jeff Jarrett are the leaders of Immortal, a heel faction within TNA, and other Immortal members include Bully Ray, Gunner, Matt Hardy, Abyss, Rob Terry and LAX. Immortal's main rivals were Fortune. Fortune featured members such as leader AJ Styles, James Storm, Bobby Roode, Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels. Hogan and...
Can we just say, every single person said in these groups are considered legends in wrestling as of right now. Or considered big influence in the world of wrestling or independent wrestling. That's crazy.
Faction within TNA, and other Immortal members include Bully Ray, Gunner, Matt Hardy, Abyss, Rob Terry and LAX. Immortals' main rivals were Fortune. Fortune featured members such as leader AJ Styles, James Storm, Bobby Roode, Frankie Kazarian, and Christopher Daniels. Hogan and Sting also had their own problems. Sting, in storyline, wasn't happy with Bischoff and Hogan calling the shots due to their past shenanigans in WCW.
Obviously.
Hulk Hogan, meanwhile, he wanted the World Heavyweight title within Immortal, and of course
he
Sting
does.
was the World Champion. At TNA's Lockdown pay-per-view in April of 2011, Sting would defend the TNA World Heavyweight Championship against Rob Van Dam and Mr. Anderson inside a steel cage. And before the match,
other
RVD
legends?
got a message that he should
Well, not
accept
so-
Hulk Hogan's offer.
Well, not so Mr. Anderson. Although he's a big influence. I wouldn't consider him an outright legend. Maybe a TNA legend. I don't really know much about his TNA run, but I wouldn't say not so much for him as Mr. Kennedy. Although I'd love to see him return. Love to see it.
Cage. And before the match, RVD got a message that he should accept Hulk Hogan's offer. RVD had no idea what this offer was supposed to be, but you can put two and two together here. During the cage match, Hulk Hogan offered a lead pipe to RVD. Hogan wanted Van Dam to hit Sting to get the world title, and this would grant Van Dam access to the Immortal faction. RVD threw the pipe away, but Mr. Anderson picked it up, and Anderson used the weapon
okay.
on Van Dam. This created an opening for the Stinger. Anderson takes the Scorpion Death Drop, and Sting left Lockdown 2011 still the TNA champion.
That fucking backfired, didn't it, bud?
On the next episode of Impact, Hogan called out Rob Van Dam. Upset that RVD didn't take Hogan up on his offer, the Hulkster calls Van Dam a mid-card player whose career
That's
is pretty much
crazy.
going nowhere. The Stinger makes an appearance,
That's
and
crazy.
Sting announces that Spike TV put a clause in his contract where he could choose his next opponent if he successfully defends the World Heavyweight title at Lockdown. Sting selects Rob Van Dam, so RVD versus Sting is booked for Sacrifice. Later in the evening, Sting
That's
has
great.
a match with Matt Hardy. Sting makes his way to the ring, but he's suddenly stopped in his tracks by Immortal. Fortune comes out to deal with Immortal, allowing Sting and Hardy to begin their match on the rampway. Before he could get in the ring, Gunner hit Sting on the leg with the lead pipe. Matt Hardy focused all his offense on Sting's injured limb, but the Icon still came out on top, defeating Hardy with the Scorpion Death Drop. After the final bell, Mr. Anderson shows up. He hits the mic check on both Sting and Matt Hardy, and Anderson makes it clear that he wants Sting one-on-one, and he wants
So
the
is he
world
part of
title. In a backstage
neither
promo
faction?
later in the evening, the Stinger said that Mr. Anderson is now his immediate focus. The next week on
Okay.
Impact, the show kicks off with Mr. Anderson showing up in his brand new truck. Anderson was very proud of his new ride, so you can imagine how he felt
Brand
when
new.
Sting smashed the windows and windshield
F-150.
with his baseball bat. Later in the evening, Sting talked about a truck being in the parking lot and how someone had left the windows down. Mr. Anderson marches to the ring holding Sting's baseball bat, and he asks Sting if
Okay.
it was the Icon who smashed his windows. Sting denies it. Anderson asks Sting again
Okay.
and again if it was he who smashed the windows. Sting repeatedly says no. Finally, Anderson says he has footage of Sting vandalizing
I
the
have
truck,
footage,
and
sir!
Sting then decides to admit it. Anderson says he can make all these problems go away if Sting selects him for the title shot at Sacrifice instead of Van Dam. RVD comes out and Van Dam tells
Make
Sting
it a
to do what
triple
he needs
threat!
to do to get rid of Anderson. And while the Stinger doesn't take the title shot away from RVD at Sacrifice, he does grant Anderson a title shot in the main event of Impact. Hulk Hogan
Okay.
comes out, and because Hogan has the power to book matches too, the Hulkster adds Bully Ray to the main event. During the match, the referee takes the Stinger splash, and this allowed Bully Ray to hit Sting with the lead pipe.
Of
Fortune's
course.
AJ Styles hits the ring, and he goes after Bully Ray. Sting is then able to use the lead pipe to his advantage, and Sting pins Bully Ray to win the match. Anderson wasn't pleased with this outcome, naturally.
At least Anderson didn't get pinned. Gotta look
On
at
the
the bright
5th of
side
May
there.
2011 episode of Impact, it was announced that a network executive would be showing up in TNA. Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff had no idea who the executive was, and they wanted answers from Sting. Sting somehow knows who this new person of
How
color
does he
is,
know?
but the Stinger tells
That makes
Hogan
no sense.
it all will be revealed next week. Throughout the show, Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan try to work out who it could be, and in a callback to an infamous WCW incident that involved Eric Bischoff, Eddie Guerrero, and a cup of coffee, Bischoff throws coffee over Brian Kendrick when Kendrick, Amazing Red, and Generation Me asked for more opportunities within TNA. At the
Yeah.
end of the show, Bischoff and Hogan find the words "You're next" spray painted on the Hulkster's car, leading to Hogan and Bischoff assuming that Bill Goldberg is the network executive. As Hogan and Bischoff
Yeah,
drive away, the
I would
camera
think
cuts
too.
back to Kendrick, Generation Me, and Amazing Red. They're all laughing. It was they who spray painted "You're next" on Hogan's car. The next week, Ric Flair,
They're just
another
fucking with him.
member of Immortal, made his return to the Impact Zone. Hogan and Bischoff naturally thought that Flair was the executive, but Rick says it's not him. Later in the broadcast, Bischoff, Hogan, and Flair come to the ring. Flair gets rid of Suicide by kicking him in the balls, and Hulk Hogan calls out the executive. Out walks Mick Foley. Yes, Mick Foley is the network
Mama
executive.
Foley's baby
Mrs. Foley's baby
boy.
announces
Or
that
Mrs. Foley's
things are
baby
going
boy.
to change in TNA. He changes the name of the whole company from TNA to Impact Wrestling, and he also announces a Battle Royal. The winner of the Battle Royal will face either Sting or Rob Van Dam for the world title after the Sacrifice pay-per-view. This Battle Royal is also notable because it includes the Impact in-ring debut of China, but in the end, Mr. Anderson became the #1 contender after he eliminated Bully Ray to win the Battle Royal. Anderson said after the match that he is the Sting what the US Navy SEALs were to Osama bin Laden. This episode of Impact was taped the day after bin Laden was caught, by the way, and Sting says that he's happy for Mr. Anderson, but the Stinger also looks forward to shutting Anderson up inside the ring. That is, of course, if Sting can beat RVD at Sacrifice.
Rob Van Dam.
RVD versus Sting was a good match, but Van Dam came up short. Mr. Anderson provided commentary for the main event bout at Sacrifice, and he managed to stay out of the match. Sting got the win with a Scorpion Death Drop, and after the bout, the two men shook hands. Mr. Anderson and the Stinger had a stare down before the show came to an end, so now we get settled in for a Sting versus Anderson rivalry, and boy, some of the work these two done together was truly phenomenal. On the next episode of Impact, it looked like the classic Surfer Sting was making a comeback when we saw Sting walking around in his vintage yellow and blue gear. Although we didn't see Sting's face. Later on, Sting appeared in his black Scorpion gear, so this confused fans. What was going on? Very much. The cameras would cut back and forth, showing modern Sting and classic Sting. Later in the broadcast,
is it Mr. Anderson?
Cut a promo where he said his focus is now split between Anderson, Hogan, and Bischoff. But at Slammiversary, Sting will take care of Mr. Anderson once and for all. The lights go out in the Impact Zone, and when they come back, Sting is standing face to face with himself. Classic Sting and modern Sting.
Yep, it's Mr. Anderson, like I thought.
Classic Sting hits the Scorpion Death Drop, and it turns out that this classic Sting is, of course, Mr. Anderson. The next week on Impact, still decked out in the Surfer Sting gear, Anderson held the Scorpion Sit-Down show. Disco Inferno was Anderson's guest on the Scorpion Sit-Down. Disco thought he was showing up to put over Sting, but Anderson reveals that this whole segment was put together to bury Sting. Disco refuses to talk bad about the Icon, and in a legitimately hilarious moment, Disco asks Anderson why he refers to himself as an asshole when, in reality, he's just a dick. Anderson attacks Disco and Sting runs in for the save. Hunt this segment down, though, it's definitely worth your time. You may be wondering at this point what all this has to do with the Joker version of Sting, but Anderson mocking Sting would send Steve Borden over the edge. What I'm covering right now is extremely important when it comes to understanding the full picture. The 2nd of June 2011 episode of Impact would again feature Mr. Anderson dressed up in Sting gear, and again Anderson wanted to poke fun at Sting's legacy. Anderson convinced Eric Young to dress up as the Great Muta in order for Anderson and Young to relive Sting's storied rivalry with the Pearl of the Orient. Young reluctantly agreed, and Young performed in the ring as the not-so-great Muta against Mr. Anderson. Anderson made a joke of the match. Young tried to walk away, but a slap in the face fired Eric up, and we ended up getting a good bout here. The not-so-great Muta ended up spraying green mist in Anderson's face, and Young...
he got
The
ya.
real Sting came out to help Young when Gunner made an appearance after the final bell. On the same show, Eric Bischoff was served legal papers. Eric thought he was getting fired, but the papers actually revealed that Mick Foley had been relieved of his network executive duties. Okay, so here we go. The next week on Impact, Hogan and Bischoff were gloating about Mick Foley getting fired. Apparently, the network now has 100% confidence in Hogan and Bischoff, and the two men called Sting and Anderson to the ring. Hogan tells both men that their upcoming title match will be clean, there will be a clear winner, and there will be no interference. Hogan had made this promise to the network, so there would apparently be no shenanigans at Slammiversary. Anderson tells Sting that there's going to be a new champion crowned at the pay-per-view, and Anderson drops the mic when Sting reaches out for it. Sting says he can't lose the title because he's the only man who can stop Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan from running Impact Wrestling into the ground. Sting then tells Hogan he needs to stand up to Eric Bischoff. Bischoff is an infection, and Hogan needs to take the scalpel from his pocket and cut away the cancer.
Okay.
Sting's overall tone was very different here, but it's what happens later in the broadcast that got people talking. Sting and Eric Young took a loss to Anderson and Gunner on this same episode of Impact, and Sting was absolutely fuming after the match. Sting pulled
People are
something out of
pissed.
his suitcase. We don't know what it is, but it would turn out to be his face paint. Anderson gives a post-match interview, but he runs to a production truck when he sees Sting approach him. Sting goes into the truck and he destroys Anderson. Sting is angry that Anderson has been mocking him and his legacy these past few weeks, and the Stinger has had enough. In the middle of this beatdown, Sting grabs his face paint and he paints a smile on his own face. A smile
Let it go.
that looked just like the Joker's, and Sting then smears the paint all over Anderson's face. Sting's mannerisms had totally changed. He was
He
completely...
snaps. Let's
And yes,
go.
it was very similar to Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker in the Dark Knight movie. Before the segment ends, Sting says, "Not gonna mock me anymore." Hulk Hogan's promise of a clean match between Sting and Anderson was a load of shit. Before the match, Anderson had a fun promo with Jeremy Borash. Borash wanted to know why Anderson was impersonating Sting. Anderson said it was entertaining, and Anderson forces Borash to smile by doing this. Anderson
fuck?
performed his normal pre-match introduction, but he was surprised by Sting. The Stinger had made some slight alterations to his face paint, but he still wasn't the complete insane icon just yet.
So
Eric
it just,
Bischoff ended
I'm
up
assuming it's
interfering in
slowly
this
throughout
match.
the weeks.
Sting had about one after hitting the Scorpion Death Drop. The referee counted Anderson's shoulders to the mat, but at the 2 count, Bischoff also hit his hand on the ring mat. Sting thought this was a 3 count, but the referee only counted 2. Anderson hits a low blow, we see the mic check, and Anderson becomes the new TNA champion.
That's
Sting was
crazy.
robbed by Eric Bischoff,
I mean,
the
good
same
story.
old thing that happened time and time again in WCW. So now you have the complete backstory. It was important to go over this instead of starting right off at Slammiversary.
I mean, true,
because
yeah.
The story of Sting versus Anderson and Sting versus Bischoff and Hogan were both equally important. And again, I know a lot of my viewers weren't big TNA fans, but they are huge Sting supporters, so it's best to gain a full understanding before continuing on. The 16th of June episode of Impact would see Sting completely snap, and it was Hulk Hogan who felt the wrath of the icon. Sting was standing in Hulk Hogan's office, and Hogan agreed to give Sting a rematch for the world title. Hogan says that he and Sting go way back, and because of their history in WCW, the Hulkster will commit to Sting's contract. Sting says he once respected Hogan, and plenty of WCW superstars looked up to the Hulkster, but Hogan's true colours always come through in the end. Sting says that Hogan is leaving behind a tarnished legacy for his children, Brooke and Nick, and this gets Hogan fired up. Sting laughs at Hogan like,
That ain't gonna work with me, brother.
asking if he just hit a nerve. Hogan demands that Sting gets out of his office, but Sting sweeps everything off Hogan's desk
Oh, snap,
before
going
asking Hulk if he wants to wear
crazy.
a mask. Sting then paints the Joker's smile on Hulk Hogan. Absolutely fantastic work here from the man called Sting. While the insane icon would be just that, completely insane, Sting would also add elements of comedy to this new character.
Yes.
On paper, it sounds like a bad idea, but in execution, Sting pulled it off incredibly well. Joker Sting was easily one of the most entertaining characters in Impact Wrestling, and it was all thanks to how Steve Borden played the role. The next week, for example, Sting made fun of Eric Bischoff for cussing at him and hurting his feelings. Sting had a great deal of difficulty taking anything Eric Bischoff said seriously, but at the same time, Sting was also really menacing. Eric Bischoff booked a match between Abyss and Sting, and while the Stinger was more than happy to step into the ring with Abyss, the icon also told Bischoff that he had to pay a price. Bischoff takes the Scorpion Death Drop before getting paint smeared all over his face. Bischoff also gets put in the Scorpion Deathlock, and all Sting could do was laugh. Later in the evening, Sting got himself disqualified during his match with Abyss. Sting used a barbed wire glove on his opponent, a weapon that Abyss introduced to the match, by the way, and Mr. Anderson watched from the rampway as Sting violently destroyed his opponent.
Okay.
On the 30th of June episode of Impact, the Stinger decided to play games with Hulk Hogan. Sting's voice led Hogan to a TV screen. On the screen, we saw the back of Sting's head. Sting asked Hogan if he was nervous, because he should be. The Stinger reveals himself, and Hogan looks pretty upset with how this is all turning out. Fed up with playing games, Hulk Hogan went to the ring and he called out Mr. Anderson. The Hulkster gives Anderson two options, either join Immortal or lose the world title by going it alone. Before a clear answer is given, Sting appears on the big screen. Sting has taken out Bully Ray, Abyss, and Immortal's newest member, Scotty Steiner. And now the Stinger wants a word with Hulk Hogan. Sting tells Anderson that they have a match in 2 weeks' time on Impact named the Midsummer Nightmare, and the Hulkster ends up getting completely humiliated here by the Stinger. Not only does Sting hit Hogan with his baseball bat, but Sting reminds Hogan to follow his own advice before shoving vitamins in his mouth. Sting ends up applying the Scorpion Deathlock, and the segment ends with Immortal hitting the ring. Later in the evening, Sting had a match with Scott Steiner, and Sting got the win. After the match, Sting goes to put the face paint on Big Papa Pump. That would have been a sight to see for sure. But Steiner is saved by Bully Ray and Mr. Anderson. The heels invite Hulk Hogan down to the ring to lay out the Stinger, but Kurt Angle's music plays in the arena. The Olympic gold medalist runs down to the ring to make the save, and Immortal get out of harm's way. This brings us then to the 7th of July episode of Impact. The show opens up with Immortal standing in the middle of the ring, and Bully Ray calls out Mr. Anderson. Bully Ray wants an answer. Is Anderson going to join Immortal, or is Anderson going to face Immortal right now in the ring? We see Sting in the rafters and the lights go out. When the lights come back on, we see Kurt Angle in the ring, and Angle makes quick
Olympic Slam!
Kurt tells Anderson that he can join Sting and Angle in a 6-man tag later in the evening. Angle, Anderson, and Sting versus Bully Ray, Abyss, and Gunner. We don't get an immediate answer though from Mr. Anderson. We do get another excellent backstage segment a little later on though. Sting is lying on the top of some lockers and he's singing his own version of Eye of the Tiger. Kurt Angle shows up and he asks Sting if he's okay. Sting says he's great, he's getting his world title back next week in the Midsummer Nightmare match. Angle reminds the Stinger that they have a 6-man tag tonight, and Sting should be focused on that rather than next week's title match. Angle is unsure if he can trust Sting due to the erratic behaviour Sting has displayed these past few weeks, but Sting reassures Angle. Later on, Hulk Hogan finds Sting and the insane icon gets taken out with his own baseball bat. And Mr. Anderson also says he's going to give Immortal their answer a little later on.
Okay.
Anderson says it will be an answer that Immortal doesn't like. The match gets underway a little later. It ends up being a 4-on-1 handicap match. There's no sign of Sting and there's no sign of Mr. Anderson. Kurt Angle is in there all on his own until finally Anderson makes an appearance and he jumps into Kurt's corner. In the end though, Anderson decided to join Immortal. Angle takes the mic check and Hulk Hogan applauds Mr. Anderson's decision to close this episode of Impact. This was bad news for Sting. Immortal was now in the corner of Mr. Anderson.
That
And so we
sucks.
arrive at the 15th of July episode of Impact, Sting versus Mr. Anderson for the World Heavyweight Championship, the Midsummer Nightmare. The show starts off with Immortal in the ring, all wearing tuxedos. We can see that a poker table has been set up, but what
Abyss
we don't
wearing a
see
tux
is the
is so
TNA
weird.
World Champion. Eric Bischoff says that Mr. Anderson will leave the Impact Zone tonight, still the World Champ. Immortal plan on throwing a big party for Anderson tonight, and then the champion makes his way down to the ring. Hulk Hogan welcomes Mr. Anderson, but then the lights go
camo
out in
tux.
the Impact Zone. When they
That's
come
actually
back on,
kinda
the
dope.
Stinger is sat at the poker table. Sting not only promises to win the world title later, but he also promises to give Impact Wrestling back to its rightful owner, Dixie Carter. Sting says he holds all the aces, he shows Immortal his cards, and then we see a group of killer clowns waiting in the rafters. Sting tells
Yeah,
Immortal that
okay.
he's going all in tonight. He flips the table, the lights go out, and Sting has vanished. A little later, Kurt Angle reveals that he's been given a title shot at the Hardcore Justice pay-per-view being held on the 7th of August. Angle says he's keeping a close eye on tonight's Sting vs. Anderson match. Throughout this episode of Impact, Sting's killer clowns attack members of Immortal. Jarrett, Abyss, and Scott Steiner all got taken out, and after Gunner gets attacked, the clowns reveal themselves to be none other than Christopher Daniels, Kazarian, James Storm, and AJ Styles.
That's a cool twist.
Fortune are supporting Sting
Fortune!
in his match with Anderson. Sting comes to the ring for his title match, and do make sure you check this one out. One of the good things about Impact Wrestling is the fact that many of their classic matches are available on YouTube. Anderson is in control for most of the match. The men use each other's
Okay.
finishers, with Anderson applying the Scorpion Deathlock.
Oh, that's
and
crazy
Sting
work.
performing a mic check. But the match takes a bad turn when Brian Hebner gets knocked out of the ring. Sting applies the Scorpion Deathlock. Anderson taps out, but there's no referee to call it. Bully Ray
Oh
shows
no,
up and
who
Sting
would
gets
have
taken
thunk
out.
it?
Ray takes his chain as Anderson holds the icon up. Just as Bully Ray goes to hit Sting, the lights go out, and when they come back on, a killer clown is stood in the ring.
That's
Bully
Angle.
Ray
You
gets
can tell
hit
from the
before lights
face.
go out once again. When they come back on, Anderson is in the ring all alone, and the mystery man is stood on the ramp. Sting takes advantage. We see the Scorpion Death Drop, and Sting reclaims the World
It's
Heavyweight
Angle.
Championship.
Obviously, you can tell from the
clown
beard.
reveals himself on the ramp.
Yep.
It was Kurt Angle who held the Stinger.
How did I know?
And this is where we end today's video. This is going to be a two-parter, I'm afraid. I was hoping to get everything into one video, but there's still
It's a two-parter. Dang, okay, I'm not doing a part two, dude. We've already had a 2.5 hour stream. That sucks. We're gonna end on a cliffhanger. But I will admit that, um, um, so I will admit that we aren't gonna upload that to YouTube at all. So what I'm thinking is each stream, one of the reactions is going to be uploaded to YouTube while the other one is uploaded or not even uploaded. It's just a stream exclusive. Have you guys have more want to watch the streams more, I guess. Um but I hope you guys enjoyed. See you in the next one. Peace.